I grew up in Toronto, and I remember when I was about 10 years old, my class went on a field trip to the Art Gallery of Ontario. The big exhibit at the time was King Tut and the history of ancient Egypt. At the time, it was literally the coolest thing I'd ever seen. My mind was blown, and to this day, I will never forget that. And I'm sure many of you, your children, your grandchildren, have had similarly amazing experiences at a museum. For everyday people like us, especially young kids, museums are the most accessible places to learn about history of all kinds, history to which you may otherwise not be exposed. All you need is a ticket, and many museums are free. They're places of knowledge and wonder. According to the American Alliance of Museums, 97% of Americans believe museums are educational assets for their communities. 92% of adults in this country say museums are nonpartisan providers of educational content. 3/4 of the American public believe museums are an important part of our civil society and have a role in supporting civic knowledge and participation. And while American history books have often told stories of the victor over the vanquished, museums and other nonpartisan institutions have worked hard to try and get it right over the years, to try and tell the whole truth. It hasn't always succeeded, but they seem to be on an onward mission to do this. The Smithsonian Institution, which defines itself as the world's largest museum, education, and research complex, is one of the best examples of this. Through exhibits at its 21 museums, 14 education and research centers, and the National Zoo, the Smithsonian has put on display decades of research and curated American history at the highest possible standard, largely without government interference. That is until now. Earlier this week, the White House announced that it's going to conduct a, quote, comprehensive internal review of selected Smithsonian museums and exhibitions, and that, quote, this initiative aims to ensure alignment with the president's directive to celebrate American exceptionalism, remove divisive or partisan narratives, and restore confidence in our shared cultural institutions, end quote. By the way, this is an internal review, not like a public discussion or hearings or things like that, an internal White House review. And anything that doesn't align with Donald Trump's vision of America will be regarded as so-called improper ideology and removed. Just let that sit with you for a second. The White House will decide what is improper ideology. The administration's first plan is to tackle 8 Smithsonian museums, including the National Museum of American History, the National Museum of African American History and Culture, the National Museum of the American Indian, and the National Portrait Gallery. Additional museums will be targeted in a second phase to be announced later. Trump first took aim at the Smithsonian back in March when he signed an executive order claiming that, quote, the Smithsonian has in recent years come under the influence of a divisive race-centered ideology, end quote. And as such, he's directed Vice President J.D. Vance, who's a member of the Smithsonian's Board of Regents, to remove improper ideology from such properties and make recommendations to Trump on how to decenter race in these spaces. Plain and simple, it's a war on history. Not the history of any one group, but our collective history, as we've learned. Hadar Harris, managing director of the Freedom of Expression Group at PEN America, summed it up this way, quote, the administration's efforts to rewrite history are a betrayal of our democratic traditions and a deeply concerning effort to strip truth from the institutions that tell our national story, from the Smithsonian to our national parks. Understanding our nation's past is critical for us to be able to navigate our nation's future. And right now, all of that is in jeopardy. Joining me now is Pulitzer Prize-winning historian John Meacham. He's the Rogers Chair in the American Presidency at Vanderbilt University and an MSNBC political analyst. John, it is great to see you. I think this is kind of remarkable. The telling of history in its fullness is what you do for a living.